Welcome to In a Nutshell, the podcast dedicated to all things agricultural consulting. I'm Dylan Brush here with soil genius and ag consultant Bill Brush, and we're delighted to accompany you on this journey where we break down the different aspects of agricultural consulting. In each episode, we'll dive into the realm of agriculture through the eyes of Bill Brush, where consultants like Bill play a vital role in empowering farmers, agribusiness, and agricultural organizations. If you're passionate about agriculture, problem solving, and enjoy a little bit of detective work, this podcast is tailor-made for you.
Hi, this is Bill Brush, and welcome back to In a Nutshell. Today I'm going to put in another episode about some of my travel, and we could just call them travel logs because I've had quite a few different trips around the world. This one was probably memorable because it was a combination of very aggressive travel schedule and total chaos, probably for 8 or 9 days. And a friend of mine who worked with me over in the Philippines gave me the nickname Quadmeister Marco Polo because of the extensive travel on this, and it's a name that stuck, and he still calls me that today. This occurred about 10 years ago, about middle of 2015, and it started off as a fairly simple project. I was going over for about 8 days to the Philippines to work for a family that I had worked with quite a few years at that time, and left San Francisco on what I thought was going to be a normal trip over to Hong Kong and then into Manila. And I got a call when I got into Hong Kong that she wanted me to stay there, but I had hours and hours to wait. So I said, I got this ticket to Manila. And she said, yeah, that'll be good. We'll be able to talk, and then we'll go back to Hong Kong, stay the night, and move on. And I said, okay. So that's what we did. I flew in onto Manila, and it was a nice conversation. They picked me up at the airport and went over to their offices and talked for a while. I already had my luggage put together, so all I did was need to take it back to the airport. So we went on back and flew from Manila into Hong Kong that night. And at that time, it seemed pretty normal. And then the next day, it began to change. We started and we flew into Thailand, into Bangkok, and had a driver that drove us up into the mountains where we looked at a really interesting, the hybrid grass. And at the time, we were working on getting livestock feed for the dairy that we were beginning to put together down in Mindanao, which is one of the large islands, or maybe the largest islands in the Philippines, that's to the south of all of the islands that make up the Philippines. And we looked at this, and it had to have some legume type of material in it because it seemed to grow like really crazy, like in a short period of time, and creates all kinds of feed. So a little fibrous to kind of feed to dairies, but I thought it could make a good silage if they could ensile it properly. But the reason I thought it was a legume, to grow that fast, it would have had to have been able to fix nitrogen out of the air. But it also was in a very, very tropical area, which can lead to heavy amounts of stabilized soil humus, which gave it a lot of nitrogen too, but somewhere in between there. We looked at this type of grass in several different places, and they explained a little bit the genetics to me. And we traveled along, looked at a couple other interesting things about some things that they did with activated charcoal, and they were working on that project also. And we were looking at that as a potential fertilizer or carbon source to hold fertilizer products for longer periods of time. And after we got back, we went and stayed the night in Bangkok, and was always treated so well there because my sponsor there gave me, she had a really good friend there, and so she really took good care of us. Great food, etc. Good conversation. We got back and we're ready to take off the next day to fly from Bangkok to Vietnam. And we were flying into Hanoi. And at that time, that's what it was called. I think they've changed it or had changed it. And I just still identified it as that. From my experience of listening to the daily news coverages on the war in Vietnam. And again, we were looking at some silage product that they had made out at one of the dairies. It was interesting because I had become so dependent on my sponsor that I did not I didn't question where we were going or why we were going, and we got into Vietnam. And as an American citizen, I had to get a visa. And as a Philippine citizen, you could go around the line and you just went in there. Well, I got into the visa line and had all my paperwork there, and he asked me a simple question: where will you be staying? And I had no idea. And my sponsor was not around me. So after a moment of panic, he just told me to go sit down somewhere, and I did. Try to get a hold of my sponsor and just to see where we were staying. Finally, after several minutes transpired, I saw her outside the line. She told me where it was, got back in line, got through. That's the only time I think in any of the travels I had there that I had even the briefest moment of any problems. But for somebody in a foreign country by yourself, and you don't know what's going to happen to you, it can get a little bit annoying, or you get a little apprehensive about what's happening. But we went on out, and it was amazing to go out through the streets of Hanoi and there in Vietnam, and everybody's on a motorbike. I've never seen so many scooters and motorbikes, all just at every stop sign, every traffic crossing, out in the country, in the town. Didn't make any difference. They were everywhere. And it was obviously their main form of transportation. And we went out to a place where they were manufacturing this silage, and it had a combination of several ingredients into it. And with it, I looked at it, and it had really good texture to it. And I had them collect some samples so we could take them back to the lab and analyze it. And we actually did eventually buy some of this material, have it available for the cows. And when we started milking, particularly, because it was going to be one of the foodstuffs that we were going to feed the milking cow once we got the dairy started. Well, we stayed, like I say, got back to the hotel, stayed that night at the Hilton in Hanoi, and brought back a lot of memories of things I saw during the photos and everything during the Vietnam War. So it was nice to see, though. The people were very friendly, regardless of my being American or not, and very polite. And so I thought we might have, they might look down or not consider you very much, but they were very, very outgoing. It was nice to see that. We got up the next morning and flew back into Hong Kong for a stopover, and we did that. And it's about the only time I've been through Hong Kong 20 times, and I think it's the only time I've ever actually stayed on the ground for any length of time there. We had an overnight stay there in Hong Kong, and we were getting ready to go. We met up with my sponsor, one of her good friends who was Japanese, and we were headed on to a couple of stops in Japan. So we left the next morning and flew out of Hong Kong and went on into Sapporo. Again, when we got to Sapporo, we were looking around at equipment and also other types of feedstuffs, because what we were really looking for is they didn't really have what we would call good quality dairy feed that was manufactured in. A lot of the dairies were just feeding whatever scraps were left over, and that's not conducive to the best milk production nor the best quality. So we were trying to get and find and be able to ship in with it through, our boats and ships that the company had, to be able to load them and bring them in and be able to drop them and land them and be able to use that for feed at the dairy. Sapporo was really an interesting place. It was one of the few places I got that it was, these rooms were so tiny that you almost couldn't roll over in the bed. It was just, the room had probably a foot on the outside of the bed, and the bed was probably 18 inches to 2 foot wide. And they were for smaller people than me, as I'm about 6 foot. I think they were made for somebody about 5 foot. My feet hung off the bed. Like I say, you would get out, tiny little bathroom you could hardly even turn around in. But it was only there one night, but it was memorable for sure. But we were able to see the sights of Sapporo as we were driving around to see where they had the Olympics there. You could still see the ski jumps and ski runs and things that they have there. But I had already, the only things I knew about Sapporo before I visited it was they made a beer, Sapporo, and that the Olympics had been held there. But it was really interesting to see the culture and everything of that particular island that Sapporo sits on. From there, we went back and flew from Sapporo the next day into Tokyo. And that by itself, if there was nothing else, Tokyo was an experience. The largest city in the world by a bunch. And to see the mass amount of humanity there on the streets, in cars, in buses, in trains, seeing high-speed rail for the first time and the terminals and how they use it was really quite an experience. In addition to that, we were there to meet some people that were working on the design for the dairy, for the barn, how it would flow, the flow of the livestock in and out, and where the storage would be for the milk tanks and everything. Anyway, they gave the whole picture of the entire place where all the dairy cows would be held and also be milked and everything. So we were there, and I was going over some things I wanted to change so that they could make it flow a little easier. And so we got through that. But one of the things that was probably most unusual is looking out the window of my hotel and look for as far as I could see was nothing but town. Tokyo just stretched for miles upon miles. And I got really a good feeling for how large and just how huge that city was, and was interested in just the reason it's so large. But nobody really ever had anything except it started big and just kept getting bigger. It's the center of their pretty much everything, their financial business and everything Japanese for their government and everything. It's just the seat of a lot of different industries there, and the people there are very, what's a good word to put? Not pushy, but they're very, very focused. And if a green light changes, you better be on the move. If the sign that tells you to walk comes on, you better start walking or you get run over. They are really aggressive, very, very rapidly going from place to place. But while around Tokyo, we went out on a trip. And on that trip, we went out to a couple places that were really still memorable to me. Went to a dairy that then marketed their own milk right there off the dairy site. And it was quite impressive because it was just so clean. Everything stainless steel, shining. There is nothing on the floor. There's no spills. There's no anything. It's just a perfect facility. And they take people that come there that want to buy their milk, they'd take out into this fabulously, not only just clean, but very, very efficient dairy farm, and how they processed everything. And they went through the whole thing with us. And we had some great ice cream that they produced right there. The other thing is I was able to look out. We were able to see a really majestic peak of Mount Fuji. It was it just stands out there by itself, and it was kind of cloud and shrouded at the bottom, but at the top you could see the peak very easily. It's very distinguishable almost from everywhere we went around there. We also went out, and one of the things that they do there that's really interesting in Japan is the people from these really super tight, and crowded metropolises would come out to the country. And one of the things they do out there is what they call agrotourism, which they do ag businesses and actually make it a tourist attraction. We went out to one that was probably the most impressive kind of farm that I'd ever seen. It was a flower farm, but they had it in rows, and it stretched out for a couple, 2-3 miles over rolling hills, and you could drive out through it. They had roads through it, so you could stop, see the different flowers, and it was just packed with people. The pictures I have really reminds me just how beautiful this place was. And they would take, people in town. To a person who lives in the country, you would never think this would be a great thing, but we would go out and look at they had bales of hay, and everybody thought they were the greatest things in the world. And the kids would climb over, had to get all pictures of all these people climbing on bales of hay, which I think is like, really? But they were enjoying it. So it shows you that ag was well respected over in Japan. And it's one of the things that they do over there is almost in everything they do in terms of agricultural commodities, only the best. They do not want things that are, mid-grade. They only want to, and they're willing to buy the best, but they truly, truly want to, they'll pay for quality, but it's got to be without blemish, without any marks, without any types of problems with the shape and the color and the texture. All's got to be perfect. And so people have this respect for when they go out to dairies and these farms, and they're well manicured, well groomed. It was just interesting to see the culture and the people. It's a place I've wanted to go back to, but haven't so far. But it would be one thing that there's so much, I think, more to see and more to experience there. So the next day, I got back on a plane and flew back to San Francisco. And so if you can think of all I've talked about here and all the places I went and all the flights I took, all happened in about 7 to 8 days. It was very, very tiring, but very rewarding. I had a great time. I was able to help find a lot of things we're looking for. So it was productive, fun, and very, very memorable. This is Bill Brush with In a Nutshell, and until next time, stay curious.
Thanks for another absolutely wonderful episode of Agriculture in a Nutshell, Bill. I'm sure that everyone listening really enjoyed what you had to say about your grand journey. And for everyone listening, make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe, and always stay curious.